Story 1, the monitor glitch. Don't look away from the screen right now. Seriously, if you're watching this on your phone or a monitor in a dark room, just keep your eyes glued to it. Because the second you look away, that's when it moves. At least, that's how it started for me. My name is Tyler, and about 6 months ago, I was desperate for cash. I took a graveyard shift doing security at this sprawling, half-empty office complex out in the suburbs. It was supposed to be the easiest money ever. The job was basically sitting in a tiny, air-conditioned booth in the main lobby from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., watching 16 low-resolution monitors and doing a perimeter walk every 2 hours. The place was always dead quiet. Just the hum of the vending machine next to my booth and the endless buzz of fluorescent lights in the empty hallways. For the first few weeks, nothing happened. I watched a lot of Netflix on my phone and fought to stay awake. It started on a Tuesday night around 3 a.m. I was staring blankly at the wall of screens. Monitor 4 covered the second floor east wing hallway. Suddenly, it flickered. It was just a burst of gray static, like bad reception, which was weird because the cameras were hardwired. When the picture snapped back a second later, something was wrong. A utility door halfway down that hall was wide open. My stomach dropped a little. I knew for a fact I had locked that door during my rounds. I replayed the footage on the digital recorder. The tape showed nothing. No static, no glitch. The door never opened on the recording. It was just closed the whole time. I figured I was just tired seeing things, but I had to check. I went up to the second floor. The hall was freezing cold. The utility door was locked tight. I rattled the handle trying to force it, but it wouldn't budge. When I got back to the booth, I felt unsettled, like someone was watching me. I tried to shake it off. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time on monitor 9, the underground parking garage. Another violent static glitch that lasted maybe 2 seconds. When the feed cleared, there was a shape near the back wall, tucked between 2 concrete pillars. It looked like a person, just standing there, facing away from the camera. I zoomed in with the crappy little digital joystick on the desk. The figure was blurry on the low-res screen, almost vibrating. It looked like it was wearing a gray hoodie. I grabbed my heavy-duty maglite and went down to the garage. My footsteps echoed too loudly on the concrete. It was deadly silent down there. I shone my light between the pillars where I'd seen the figure. Nothing, just oil stains and dust. By the time I got back upstairs to the booth, my heart was hammering against my ribs. I looked at monitor 9. The garage was empty. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a shadow or a rat crawling on the camera lens. Then I looked at monitor 1. That camera showed the main lobby, directly on the other side of the glass wall of my security booth. The screen glitched hard, turning totally gray. The audio feed, which usually just hissed with quiet white noise, suddenly blared a sound I can only describe as a wet, guttural choke. When monitor 1 came back online, the figure from the garage was standing right there in the lobby, right on the other side of the safety glass, maybe 5 feet from where I was sitting. And it wasn't facing away anymore. I froze. I couldn't breathe. It was wearing a gray hoodie, but where its face should have been, there was just shifting, gray static, like the glitches on the screen. Here's the part that messed me up the most. My actual eyes were looking through the glass into the real lobby. It was totally empty, but the monitor sitting right in front of me showed the static-faced thing standing there, staring right at the camera, staring at me. I reached for the desk phone to call 911, my hand shaking so bad I almost knocked the receiver off the hook. Before I could dial, every single one of the 16 monitors simultaneously glitched to static. The choking sound on the audio feed got louder, overlapping into a chaotic scream. Then the lights inside my security booth died. I was plunged into total darkness, except for the faint green glow of an exit sign down the hall, reflected faintly on the now black monitor screens in front of me. In the sudden silence, I heard a distinct sound right behind me in the tiny booth. It was the click of the metal locker where I kept my jacket. Adrenaline took over. I spun around in my office chair, shining my flashlight blindly into the corner of the booth. Nothing, the locker was closed. The booth was empty. I let out a shaky breath I didn't know I was holding and turned back to the desk to grab my keys and get the hell out of there. That's when I saw it. In the reflection of the dead, black screen of monitor 1 right in front of me. The faint green light from the exit sign caught something standing directly behind my chair. It was the static-faced thing. It hadn't been outside in the lobby. It had been inside the booth with me the whole time, just waiting for the lights to go out. I don't remember running. I just remember hitting the cold night air outside the main doors and tripping over the curb, scraping my palms raw on the pavement. I drove home doing 90. I quit the next morning over email. I didn't care about the paycheck. I tried to tell the manager that someone broke in, but he said the alarm system never tripped. He watched the tapes from that night. He said I just sat in the booth for 4 hours staring at blank screens before suddenly running out like a maniac. He thinks I was on drugs. I work days now, stocking shelves in a busy retail store with lots of people around and no security cameras pointed at me. But I still can't look at screens at night, because sometimes when I walk past a turned-off TV or a dark computer monitor in my apartment, I catch a glimpse of something blurry in the reflection, standing just over my shoulder. Story 2, the rooftop figure. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, right on the edge of sleep, and you hear a noise outside. You tell yourself it's just the wind or maybe a stray cat. Don't lie to yourself. Deep down, you know when something just isn't natural. My name is Mark, and about 6 months ago, I was living in this cramped suburban neighborhood just outside of Philly. You know the type, rows of 2-story houses packed so tightly together you could practically lean out your window and shake hands with your neighbor. I worked the swing shift at a distribution center, usually getting back to my rental house around 3 a.m. I lived alone, and honestly, I liked the quiet of those early morning hours. It started on a Tuesday. I was winding down with a beer in my upstairs bedroom, just staring out the window into the dark gap between my house and the next one over, old Mrs. Gable's place. That's when I noticed it. On the very peak of Mrs. Gable's roof, there was a dark shape against the slightly lighter night sky. At first glance, it just looked like a lump, maybe a raccoon or a bunch of wet leaves stuck together. I didn't think much of it and went to bed. The next night, same time, I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom and glanced out that window. The lump on Mrs. Gable's roof was gone. But then I looked to the left at the house 2 doors down, which had been vacant for months. The shape was there, and it wasn't a lump anymore. It was standing upright on the steep shingles. It looked like a person, impossibly tall and thin, dressed in something matte black that seemed to absorb the moonlight. It was perfectly still, just facing away toward the street. The weirdest part, the part that made the hair on my arm stand up, was that it didn't look solid. It was vibrating slightly, like bad static on an old TV screen. I got this sick feeling in my gut. I shut the blinds, went downstairs, and double-checked every lock on the doors and windows. I didn't sleep much that night. I tried to convince myself I was hallucinating from exhaustion. But 2 nights later, the noise woke me up. It was a soft, heavy thump like something landing. I crept out of bed and peeked through the sliver between my blinds. My heart hammered against my ribs. The figure was on the house directly across the narrow street now. It was much closer than before, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't facing away anymore. Even though it was too dark to make out a face, I could feel it. It was staring directly at my bedroom window. It knew I was watching. I didn't hesitate this time. I grabbed my phone, ran into the hallway, and dialed 911. I told the dispatcher there was a prowler jumping between rooftops and peeping into windows. The cops arrived fast, cutting their lights before turning onto my street. Two officers, a guy named Miller and his partner Diaz, came to my door. They took it seriously, which was a relief. Diaz went around the back of the house with a heavy-duty flashlight, while Miller stayed with me in the living room. We could hear Diaz outside, his boots crunching on the gravel pathway. Backyard clear. Roof lines look clear, Diaz's voice crackled over Miller's radio. Miller walked over to my front window and peered out. You said it was across the street last you saw it. Yeah, right opposite my bedroom, I said, my voice shaking. Miller leaned closer to the glass, frowning. He pulled out his own small flashlight and shone it angrily at the window pane from the inside. Sir, Miller said slowly, when was the last time you cleaned these windows? I don't know, a while ago. Why? Because, he said, angling the light, there are fresh smudges right here, on the outside of the glass. Before I could process that, a sound came from the backyard that I will never forget. It wasn't a shout for backup. It was Diaz screaming, a raw, terrified sound that cut right off into a choke. Miller drew his gun and bolted for the back door. I should have stayed put, I know that, but panic makes you do stupid things. I followed him. We burst onto the small concrete patio in the back. Officer Diaz was on the ground, scrambling backward on his elbows, his flashlight rolling on the grass, casting crazy shadows. He was pointing shakily toward the roof of my house. I looked up and my knees almost gave out. The figure wasn't standing on top of the roof. It was clinging to the underside of the eaves, directly above my bedroom window, hanging upside down like a massive spider. Its limbs were bent at sickening angles to grip the wood, and its head was twisted 180 degrees around, looking straight down at us. In the chaotic light from the dropped flashlight, I saw two eyes flash. They didn't look human. They looked like flat silver coins. Miller yelled at it to get down, but his voice cracked. The thing didn't make a sound. It just scrambled backward, moving with jerk, insect-like speed, and squeezed itself into the small attic ventilation slat under the roof peak. The sound it made as it forced its body through that tiny metal opening was like wet leather tearing. They never found it. A SWAT team searched the attic an hour later, but it was empty. The vent cover was bent inward, though. I packed a bag that night and never slept in that house again. I lost my security deposit, but I didn't care. I live in a basement apartment now in a different city. It has tiny windows that are ground level, covered with bars. But here's the thing that keeps me awake. Sometimes, when the city gets quiet around 4 a.m. Story 3, the unlocked gate. Check your backyard gate tonight. Don't just look at it from the window and assume it's fine. Go out there, put your hand on the cold metal, pull on the latch and make sure it's actually locked. Because I didn't do that. I trusted my eyes, and now I can't close them without seeing that face in the dark. My name is Jason. A few months ago, my wife, Sarah, and I moved into what we thought was our dream home. It was a beautiful, mid-century modern place tucked away in a heavily wooded part of a quiet suburb in North Carolina. It sat on about 2 acres of land, and the whole property was surrounded by a 6-foot-high black iron fence. The only way in was through a heavy, automated driveway gate. I'm a software developer, so I'm a bit of a tech nerd. I had the latest security cameras installed, smart locks on every door, and a high-end system for the gate that I could control right from my phone. Sarah is a pediatric nurse, so she often works long night shifts at the hospital, leaving me alone in that big, quiet house. The first few weeks were perfect, but then things started to get weird. It was a Tuesday night, maybe 2 a.m. I was in my home office finishing up some code when I looked at my second monitor, which shows the live feed for the driveway. The gate was wide open. My stomach did a weird little flip. I knew I'd closed it after getting my takeout delivery at 7 p.m. I pulled out my phone and tapped the close command. Nothing happened. I figured the motor was jammed or something. I grabbed a flashlight, threw on a hoodie, and walked down the long gravel driveway. The air was thick and humid, and the woods were unusually silent. When I got to the gate, there was no debris in the tracks, no mechanical failure. It had been manually disengaged. Someone had pulled the emergency release pin from the inside. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. I scanned the darkness with my light, but saw nothing but the dense trees. I put the pin back in, locked it, and walked back to the house, checking over my shoulder the entire time. The next night I was hyper-aware. I stayed up watching the monitors. At exactly 3:14 a.m. the gate hissed. I watched the screen as it slowly swung open. No one was there. No car, no person. Just the gate opening into the black void of the street. I checked the logs on my app. It said the gate had been opened by Sarah's access code. But Sarah was sitting right next to me on the couch. She stayed home that night because she was feeling under the weather. I showed her the phone, my heart hammering. She looked at the screen, her face pale, and whispered that she hadn't touched her phone all night. We called the local police. A cruiser came by 20 minutes later. Officer Miller, a guy who looked like he'd seen too many boring shifts, walked the perimeter. He told us it was probably a glitch in the software or a neighbor's remote on the same frequency. He was dismissive, but I could tell he didn't like the look of those woods either. After he left, I did something I thought was a bit overkill. I bought a heavy-duty steel chain and a massive padlock. I wrapped that chain around the gate and the pillar until it was physically impossible for it to move, even if the motor tried to pull it. I felt better for exactly 24 hours. The following night, Sarah was back in the hospital. I was exhausted, so I fell asleep on the sofa around midnight. I woke up at 3:30 a.m. to the sound of my phone blowing up with notifications. Motion detected at the gate. Motion detected at the gate. I opened the app, my hands shaking. The feed was grainy, but I could see a figure standing just outside the gate. They were tall, wearing a dark, oversized raincoat. They weren't trying to get in. They were just standing there, perfectly still. Then the figure reached out and touched the gate. I watched in total disbelief as the heavy steel chain I'd installed simply fell away. It didn't look like it was cut. It looked like it had turned to dust. The gate swung open with a violent speed it wasn't capable of. I was paralyzed. Then the figure looked directly into the camera. The face wasn't human. It looked like a mask made of wet gray paper, with no mouth and two hollow, silver pits where eyes should be. It raised a hand and pointed toward the house. I scrambled to the front door, making sure the deadbolt was thrown. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and then remembered the back door. I sprinted through the dark house, but as I reached the hallway leading to the laundry room, I stopped. The back door was already open. The cool night breeze was blowing the curtains. I backed away, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I needed to find a place to hide. I ran upstairs to our bedroom and locked the door. I crawled under the bed, clutching my phone, ready to call 911. But then I saw her. Sarah was lying in the bed. I could see her feet hanging off the edge. Relief flooded through me. She must have come home early and didn't hear me. "Sarah," I whispered. "Sarah, someone is in the house." She didn't move. She didn't respond. I reached up and touched her ankle. Her skin felt like cold, wet clay. It was unnaturally soft, like there were no bones underneath. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from Sarah. I looked at the screen. "Hey babe, I'm just pulling up to the gate now. Can you buzz me in? The app is acting weird and the gate won't open." The thing on the bed started to shift. It didn't sit up like a person. It folded itself, its limbs bending at impossible angles. A head began to peek over the edge of the mattress, looking down at me under the bed. It was that gray, paper-like face. The silver eyes were inches from mine. It didn't have a mouth, but I heard a voice. It sounded like a recording of Sarah, played backward and underwater. "You shouldn't have locked it," it hissed. "He doesn't like being kept out." I didn't think. I kicked the thing with everything I had and bolted for the bedroom window. I smashed the glass with a heavy lamp and jumped. I landed hard on the mulch below, probably twisting my ankle, but the adrenaline meant I didn't feel a thing. I ran for the driveway. I saw Sarah's car idling at the gate. I screamed her name. She saw me and unlocked the doors. I dived into the passenger seat, screaming at her to drive, just go, don't look back. We didn't go back for our things. The police went in the next morning and found the house completely empty. Every single door and window was wide open. The weirdest part, the heavy iron gate had been welded shut from the inside. Not just locked, but the metal had been fused together as if by an intense heat. We live in a high-rise apartment in the city now. It's loud, crowded, and there isn't a tree for miles. But sometimes when I'm lying in bed, I hear a familiar sound. It's a soft, hydraulic hiss, followed by the metallic clank of a latch opening. And I realize that some gates aren't built to keep things out. They're built to keep us in.